Now, high drama at Cosatu's Workers' Day rally yesterday. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa was forced to leave that event. He initially went to speak to disgruntled Sibanye-Stillwater mine workers who want the president to intervene in their wage strike. But he left when people rushed the stage. To discuss this further, we're now joined by Cosatu's first Deputy President, Mike Shingange. Mr. Shingange, good morning and thank you very much for your time. A rather unexpected turn of events yesterday for Cosatu's leadership, I take it. I mean, a lot of people now are trying to make sense of that moment. Now, having had a bit of time to process what happened yesterday, where exactly do you stand? Do you stand by your workers? Do you feel embarrassed, perhaps? Or are you even willing to concede, as some have said, that this indicates a clear disconnect between what leadership prioritizes in its alliance meetings and what the workers on the ground actually prioritize?
No, good morning, Mfundo, and good morning to your viewers. Of course, we always stand by workers. I don't think even the leadership of government will have been surprised, because this has been a upcoming growing anger on the workers. Ourselves as Cosatu, much as we will not have planned to invite people into our activities and do what we did to them, but there's no way we can stand here and condemn workers, because ourselves from the Central Executive Committee have been writing statements after each of our analysis meetings about the growing anger of workers. I mean, when government reneged on the collective agreement, we did warn that they're actually provoking workers, and in fact they are declaring war, and the war has no formula. Workers will fight for their rights however way they see it fit. So we're not surprised, we're not embarrassed, and we don't condemn workers.
But I caught President Losi's reaction to the chaos yesterday on television. She said maybe this was good to bring to light issues that were probably hidden from leadership. What could have possibly been hidden when the media houses have been reporting on the workers' demand of that 1,000 rand increase, while we all know that the CEO, Neil Froneman, pocketed 300 million this past year? And beyond this, you speak of the union's position. You know where they stand on government's handling of that public sector wage deal. It's well documented. They're still aggrieved. So what would have been hidden from a leadership that actually leads in this country, where you fully are exposed to what the media is reporting on some of these issues?
Not the media that have been reporting on some of these issues. The leadership of the unions have always been with workers. Nothing will have been hidden in front of the workers' leadership. The issue could have been hidden to the leadership of the country, because we, as leaders of the unions, have always been engaging the leadership. We have been engaging the president, have been engaging the alliance government. They have not been listening to perhaps. It was important that workers showed that it is not the leadership that is unhappy, it is not leadership that is angry, but it is the workers. So that is the leadership that needed to see a wake-up call, not the leadership of workers. Leadership of the workers has always been aware of the anger of workers, because they are there on a daily basis. That is why we engage on their behalf all the time.
So you've always been aware, but somehow have not been able to change the fortunes of the workers in this respect. Can you honestly say, when you look at your ANC at the ANC as an alliance partner, can you locate your influence or somehow just labor in any of those policies?
Firstly, we don't know exactly what you mean by not being able to change the fortunes of workers, number one, because I'm sure you will know, will agree that if there were no trade union in this country, the conditions of workers would be worse today. The fact that we are not able to achieve everything else that we aspire to achieve as workers doesn't mean that things could not be worse if they were not protected by the unions, if we're not fighting on a daily basis. And of course, we always try to separate the issues of politics and the alliance from the issues of bread and butter of workers. This is not just about AIDS. For instance, you will have seen that workers there that started this thing yesterday in the state, there were workers in the mining sectors. But of course, the workers are under siege across the sectors of the economy, not just that which are employed by government. And of course, that the government themselves are leading by an example of undermining the rights of workers, including collective bargaining. That makes the private sector also to follow, so does not help the situation. But that does not mean that the leadership or the unions are not not there all the time to try and defend the rights of the workers.
But I'm sure you've probably seen most of the pundits as early as yesterday trying to characterize this issue, that it's beyond the 1,000 rand, as you correctly concede. Then what would you say to those that say that you're in fact now looking like you're compromising yourselves and workers in particular by remaining in an alliance that clearly won't be reconfigured to mutually benefit its partners, because you guys have been talking about a reconfiguration of the alliance?
What mistake we should not do is to think that the workers that are attacked in the country, that are in the worst situations, are those workers that are found in the unions that are in the alliance with the governing party. There are many federations in this country and many unions that are not in the alliance with the ANC and themselves are not better off. So the issues with an alliance matter here, because otherwise, if it was possible to win things outside the alliance, I'm sure many things would have been won without the alliance. So we must not conflict issues here. The status of the working class, the brutality of the employers and the capital is the same irrespective of whether you're in the alliance or not. And that's the real enemy here. It's capital. It's not the alliance. Otherwise, things will be good in this country because there are many unions that are not part of the alliance. So the issue is not the alliance here. The issue is the attitude of the employers. The issue of the economy. The issue here is the capital that must be fought by workers united across the federations and across the unions.
But some might disagree, Mr. Shingange, and say that to a certain extent, when unions decide to join a particular labor federation, they look at their options and see that perhaps if we join a Cosatu as opposed to a SAFTU, maybe our fortunes would change somewhat, because they're looking at your proximity to the African National Congress, which happens to be a governing party. So some would make that consideration purely based on your proximity and think that somehow you are at the table and you would influence in their favor in most instances. That here, if you guys are together at alliance meetings, you're going to somehow influence the policies that they go on to see then in government. Wouldn't you think that's what maybe unions consider when they join a labor federation?
Of course, workers have got a choice of freedom of association. We're proud of the fact that South African democracy allows that. But what we must not make as a mistake is to think that Cosatu chose to be in a relationship with a ruling party. We are not. We were in a relationship with the ANC long before the ANC was a ruling party. So our relationship with the ANC was based on the things that we were agreeing on, not because we were a ruling party. We never dreamed at that time that the ANC will be a ruling party one day. So we didn't wake up after we are in government that we are looking for a ruling party. There may be a ruling party, another ruling party tomorrow, which doesn't mean that we're going to jump into another ruling party. So our relationship with the ANC must be understood that it is not informed by the fact that it is the ruling party. It is informed by the shared perspective that we shared long before this country was liberated.
But the conditions that existed then under apartheid, when they were just a revolutionary movement, yes, of course, there was no option for you to align with a ruling party. But maybe the workers would assume that once now this revolutionary movement ascended and became government of the day, that things would even work out a bit better. But if we look at just where you stand, some of the issues that you guys seem to be divided on with the current ruling party, you have government that believes that the private sector can play a significant role in creating employment or even retaining employers, whereas Labour is of the view that government needs to do away with that assumption, that the private sector will not create jobs. If anything, if there was an option to automate, they would take that option because they are mostly in business to maximize profits to a certain extent. So you differ just fundamentally on that, or have you found each other at this point?
We differ fundamental on that. In fact, you're correct. That is what partly of this commemoration of the May Day was used for as workers. Over and above just remembering those who came before us and commemorating their struggles and their victories, was to look at the current situation of the working class today and attitudes of the employer towards the workers. And that is why we continue to fight inside government, inside alliance, inside all the employers that are there, that things must change. We don't agree that government has no responsibility to create jobs. Their responsibility to create is to create conducive environment for the business to create jobs. In fact, we are where we are today simply because of the private sector wants a leaner state. They want fewer workers and they want to automate. And that's a struggle that we're prepared to continue to take forward, including holding retrenchment. So on that one, yes, we disagree. And that is why it is in those platforms of the alliance that we use them to campaign for the workers' rights, to win as little as we can or to win as much as we can, inside the alliance, because it's the platform that we're supposed to use to contest for the hegemony of the workers, to contest for the rights of the workers and the favorable policies for the workers, not to be outside. We use the alliance as a platform for us to contest the space. Because left alone, obviously, as you can see now, surely there are people who are influencing the policy direction that our country must take, and we can't fold our arms or work away and hope that one day somebody is going to feel pity for us. We have to stay inside the pot and fight for ourselves.
So you don't believe outside the pot you'd probably be more aggressive in your fight? Because at this point, some are even accusing you of being co-opted now, that as leadership, you're very circumspect in how you approach matters with the ruling party. You have to be rather soft. So what do you say to those that say if you're on the outside, you would really wage a war?
I thought workers waged the war yesterday. I don't know if that was not an indication of the start of the war.
Okay, Mr. Shingange, fair enough. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Nahal First Deputy President Mike Shingange.